So this is the climax of our show. And what we'll do is we'll have each one of the people, maintainers and approvers, introduce themselves. This is a panel, actually, this is a time for audience participation as well. So, this is a time for you to have a chance to ask questions that you would never be able to easily ask before about how the project is run, things that you never knew behind the scenes happen inside a big open source project like Dapper and how it engages people. So. Can you hear me, Xavier?
I do not have any sound yet, so I'm not sure if everybody can hear me, but...
We can hear you, yes? Can you hear us? Oh, okay, okay. Now.
Yes, that works better. Thank
now
you.
Can you hear us? All
yes.
right, that's good. All right. Okay, so with that, we'll start with you, Artur, at the end there. Well, introduce yourself and which repos, who you are, and which repos you maintain.
Yes.
And just give us an intro.
Okay, so my name is Artur. I'm maintainer of Dapper Runtime, Dapper SDK for Java. What else? Dashboard. CLI? No, I'm not. A few more, and then I'm also part of the STC, and I'm engineering manager for the Dapper team at Microsoft.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name's Yaron. I maintain two repositories to remember. Help me, Dapper Runtime, Components Contrib, CLI, Go SDK.
Dashboard.
Yeah, dashboard, I am? Okay, fine. Good for you to remember me that, to remind me that. I think that's it. Yeah, also on the steering committee, been with Dapper from day one. Yeah, pleasure to work with Artur and the rest of the Dapper maintainers.
Hi everyone, I'm Nyemade, the crazy person running around all day. I am an approver in the community repo. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. It was kind of hard to follow.
All right, Xavier, introduce yourself.
Yes, so Xavier, hi everybody, nice to meet you. So I'm calling in actually from Belgium. So thank you for joining at for me this late hour. So I'm the technical lead at Proximus for the IoT practice, and I lead the JavaScript SDK for Dapper.
Fantastic. And then finally, I'm Mark Fussell, and I'm actually a maintainer of the Dapper docs repo, as well as the sort of quick start repo. So I spend a lot of my time writing the docs. So if the docs are good, come and find me. If the docs are bad, come and find me. All right? Because the docs have got to be fantastic. So with that, I'm going to start off with a pretty easy question to get things warmed up. Just tell me, Artur, something about your favorite thing about Dapper feature, and what is it that you love? What is it that you would really like to tell people it's just phenomenal about Dapper and why they should use it?
Well, I think my favorite thing is the portability and how you can have like a same API, use different components behind the scenes, and like for local development, that's life-changing. When like I don't need to have my own little cloud set up on like Azure or AWS, I can just use Redis or my favorite state store and have everything locally just quickly running, while like in pre-production and production, there's a whole cloud infrastructure behind the scenes. So for me, it was like life-changing experience.
Life-changing.
Oh, no, I agree. I'm going to maybe expand on that a little. So for me, it's definitely the portability aspect also. I find the local development to cloud being, the thing that drives it the most for me. More than portability across other clouds or different clouds maybe. I think the thing I love about Dapper the most is that it gives you this reliability, because instead of you as a developer needing to write the same piece of code that probably millions of other developers have written, to do like fault resiliency against, call to a database. How many times do you retry a database, right? Or like how many times do you circuit break the Twitter API? Or, how like do you trace your call through 3 different services? How many times has that code been written? Probably, millions of times. But Dapper basically encapsulates all of these best practices into these building blocks that we give. And to me, this is also life-changing. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a fairly similar answer, but mine is more from like the abstraction side point. I like that. I think one of my favorite things about Dapper is the fact that it provides an abstraction so that a lot of our users and engineers in general can kind of focus on the aspects of their business logic that they're actually interested in. I think one of the things, I can't remember who said it, but someone said something that made me laugh earlier, where they're like, how many of you have written your own like authentication modules? And he starts listing all these things. And I think these are problems that we see so often where there's so many different types of engineers that kind of come into play to actually create, build, maintain an application. And not all of those engineers have the same level of understanding of every aspect of their application. So it's really nice to be able to see people that are able to kind of just develop the way that they want to, and they don't have to actually think about these more lower level technical things, or even just like making decisions on, you know, the types of what's the perfect state store for me to use. Like you can kind of just get the ball rolling, start, and then swap things out as well if you need to. So I think that's the coolest thing for me for Dapper.
Xavier, over to you.
Yes, I think almost everything was said already. So maybe something to add as well is the flexibility. So I think where Dapper really shines as well is it grows with you. Like no matter how small or how big you are, like we at Proximus, we're just starting off. Sometimes we're just running it locally, so we can run it locally through the Dapper run command. Now we're running it in cloud, but we're just running it on a container instance, so we can just package it in the container itself rather than having really the distributed cluster setup. We can run it as a sidecar. It really grows the more complex it gets, and then that's really where it shines. And then, of course, the portability, as already mentioned, it's just amazing. Like, no matter which cloud you are, you can switch from one cloud to the other cloud vendor, and it really helps at an enterprise level to convince all the higher managers to reduce the lock-in, and then they're happy, and we can all move much more faster.
Oh, fabulous. I think all of those are kind of pretty endorsing answers around them. And so let's kind of move on to a little bit about community and how we engage with that. I always, you know, Dapper's community growth has been pretty phenomenal over the last year. People have done a lot to it more, but sometimes I think we have to do more to engage the community a bit more and reach out to them and get them more involved and kind of get them insights to the project itself. So Nyemade, maybe starting with you, how is it that the community and Dapper can work together, or what can we do more there with the community?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely a lot more we can do with the community aspect of Dapper, but we've already been kind of making a few steps towards that. So I think one of the things we wanted to target was make it easier for our users to actually engage with Dapper. So we get a lot of good like code contributions, but what we want is to kind of empower and enable our users to actually be able to take up different mantles within the Dapper project on their own. So being a release coordinator, right? So we've gone ahead and we've put down our release process in our GitHub and kind of defined that a bit more clearly so people can kind of understand what the release process really looks like, what to expect for cadence of releases. We're working on making our community calls more, they're already open to the public, but there's a lot more we can do there to kind of pull people in from the community to make it a bit more accessible. So we've created like a sign-up form where you can kind of sign up for a Dapper community call at any point, and then we'll just kind of pull you in to that call. And that kind of gives a really good primary way for you to kind of engage with the entire community. So one of the things we've been trying to focus on a lot is just making sure that we kind of pull this information out of our brains for how to do these things within the Dapper project that we're, a lot of the maintainers and improvers are doing often, putting it down on paper and presenting that into the community so that they can actually actively engage more than just like contributing code, but actually take ownership of like a release process or some other aspect of Dapper. So yeah.
Okay, Yaron.
I think Dapper has focused a lot on back-end developers traditionally, but there's a whole new set of developers out there that we're probably missing out on. Mainly like, you know, front-end developers write a bit of back-end code, like the Node.js developers, single-page application, React, you know, Angular, where you might dabble in back-end code. Python developers, for certain Python developers writing machine learning code that can utilize Dapper. I think we've been missing out on these communities a little. Yeah. I think there's more we can do, you know, to reach those developers, not just the, you know, hardcore back-end services, infrastructure types of developers, and really bring the Dapper word to a larger audience.
Yeah, actually, that's kind of, I like that as well. I've been definitely trying to reach into the Python community a lot more and getting the Python community, because like you can build back-end and front-end with Python, things like that, but it's kind of driven like, they kind of think Python, machine learning, that's all they do. But it's surprising how, you know, if the Python communities, you could discover Dapper a lot more, but the things they could accomplish, I think, could be amazing. There's 9 million of them out there. Yep. Artur.
Well, for me, I think it's basically how we can keep building more APIs and more building blocks and have the community to adopt those. So there's tremendous value. Like, you don't need to send a pull request to add value to the community. by adopting something that's still in alpha, a component or API, and giving feedback to us, trying out at a different scale, a higher scale that we have tested, for example. So I learned a lot, for example, by helping Mo to go to production. We figured out some things that we can get better at Dapper that way. And they were like super partners in like trying out things. And they went all in with actors as you saw in the presentation. So that was a good example of like how being an adopter, an early adopter, can really help us boost the project.
Yeah, I want to add something to that. You know, do you know how the CNCF counts contributors? It's not basically people who commit code necessarily, it's people who comment on issues too. And that's a really big thing to call out, because you contribute to the project, but just by opening up an issue and saying, hey, this thing doesn't work, or you even have a typo on the documentation. So every way you can interact with the community and with us maintainers is really contributing to the project, and that gets recognized. Not just by us, we thank the community a ton every time you do something like that, but by CNCF also.
Xavier, your comments, your thoughts. Where does community fit in your space?
And community is definitely the most important aspect in any project, right? So, and I think what we can as well do from our side is write articles, for example. So I think it's always handy to have these easy to follow guides. You just follow the steps and you can instantly get started with it. So we should definitely keep on creating the documentation, making sure that everybody can read it, creating all the guides through that. And I think we really should open up towards the community more, do more talks as well, such as these ones. And really, as mentioned already, I think front end as well, there's a huge opportunity there right now. Like React is shipping version 18 as we speak. And with that, there comes server-side rendered components, which as well helps easier interaction with Dapper at the microservice level. So I think it's also as well something we should look at and help people to start using that more.
Okay, yeah, actually, if anyone wants to write some docs on using Istio and Dapper together, I've been trying to get those written for a while. Maybe reach
for
out
at least
here.
2 years. At least 2 years we've been wanting to write that.
Yes.
And we know lots of users using Istio and Dapper together.
Oh, yeah, that's true, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we can probably talk about that as a little topic in a moment to go
Yeah.
down that direction. But first, let's kind of ask you out there, you've been sitting here all day. I'm sure there's a burning question that's maybe come up and you said to yourself, if only I could ask this question and get my answer for it all. So does anyone have a particular question? And we could start with you, Kendall. And maybe we'll start in the front here first. So here, I'm going to hand you my bike.
I have a ton of questions. I'll just go out of you. How many do you guys usually have on the community calls, like lately? Like head count?
I would say we would have anywhere between like 17 to maybe like 22. I know that's like a really random numbers, but I'm thinking of our last few and like averaging them in my head, but that's like a round amount.
Yeah, and then we get something like 300 plus views on YouTube afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes, if we have really interesting subjects, we'll get like 40, 50 people.
Okay. And has there been any work or talks about any kind of VS tooling around Dapper?
There is a VS Code extension, right, Artur?
Yes, we do have a VS Code extension.
Okay.
And there was actually last year's intern made some improvements to that, but yes, we do have a VS Code extension.
I have more. Go. Well, okay, well, we can go around. We can go around. Yeah, let's keep going here. Like on this side of the thing, are there any questions over here? Let's go down here. Fabulous.
So you have a bunch of Dapper APIs. How do you make sure those APIs are be consistent and following the same standard and same quality?
Well, there's a great question. It does take a lot of time from maintainers to be engaged in discussions. Yaron and I, if we keep pinging each other, can you look at this? Just look at this thing here. What do you think? So there's a lot of history that we have, and we keep bringing that up. A good example of that was in the configuration API, where like was a huge discussion, was a proposal for the community. It was not from Microsoft or Diagrid, and it was many different opinions on how this should be. And then we like, okay, let's make it consistent to how Dapper operates. And like, I actually made a little video. Don't you remember that? I posted a little video explaining my idea on the issue.
Oh yeah, I do.
For people to come on to the same page, and then end up making, like we saw now the presentation from Deepan Shu on configuration API. So that's how we usually go, is basically maintainer's duty. doing that. There is some work that we're doing now on the SDK spec that is aligned to that, but we still didn't get a lot of traction there, which is keeping the consistency not only at the API, but also within the SDKs. And in my experience, shows that to be a bigger challenge because each SDK has its own maintainer. So even though the runtime maintainers can agree on the API, the SDK maintainers can make independent decisions, and sometimes there's little deviations. So these are the next, I would say, the next challenge for us to figure out.
Yeah, and shout out to Alibaba Cloud who contributed the configuration API to Dapper. They're not here in this KubeCon, but they were the community contribution that came along. Yeah, that was a huge issue that we had to read like day and night for months, I think. We also have conformance tests. So, components are the underlying thing for Dapper to basically interact with those APIs. And we do have conformance tests to basically make sure that every new component is adhering to the Dapper APIs. It's a lot of work to keep that in sync, but we are very adamant to have that, yes.
Maybe I'll reach out to you, Xavier. Did you hear the question? It was, the challenge was how do you keep some of the APIs consistent? And maybe you as an SDK maintainer can give some of your insights about how you're having to chase after the guys at the end here.
Yeah, he's laughing already.
Yes. So thanks for involving me. And sorry if I didn't see the question. It's a bit hard to understand everybody in the room. But so yeah, it's the biggest struggle I would say in my life with keeping up with the API. So the Dapper sidecar as such it's evolving constantly, and of course new features get added, and then we have to look at the features are at the sidecar, but how as a developer do we want to create an experience that makes it easy for that specific ecosystem, in my case in the JavaScript ecosystem, to interact with that sidecar. And we work together with all the maintainers on the JavaScript SDK because I'm definitely not alone on that. I think we're now 4 or 5 core maintainers, and then some community pull requests coming in all the time. And then we look, we discuss together and we say, this is what the spec needs to look like on the JavaScript SDK side of things. And this is how we're going to interact with the sidecar to really make things even easier than in the original spec proposed with the sidecar, because people don't want to care about the protocols. They just want to start working with all the different components in Dapper, and we really want to lower that barrier as much as possible. And it takes a lot of time. Like we always, like all the features that we have open, most of them are just API spec adoption and ensuring that we're constantly up to date with the latest coming out in Dapper.
So I'm going to come back and ask more questions here in a moment, but I'm going to do a little quick one as we go around here, and that is, I'm really intrigued about when you look towards the future of where Dapper is in terms of some of the proposals that are coming along. What are some of the more exciting proposals, suggestions, things that are coming down the pipe, and in terms of things that you think that will be very impactful on the project? And Nyemade, maybe we can start with you on this one, about some of your opinions here, things that you think are exciting as you look towards the future of what's happening.
Yeah, I don't know if this proposal is the most exciting to everyone. It's pretty exciting for me because I'm working very closely on the feature, but there's a proposal that came up that's basically about like moving the actor reminders and timers into the control plane for Dapper instead. And the reason why I'm excited about this is because, so I think someone said this earlier about us using actors to actually underpin our workflow feature, and that is one of the things we're looking at. So in a way, by building out this workflow feature, we're also able to kind of improve a lot of the just the performance aspects of actors itself. So we kind of get like a 2-for-1, and this is one of those things that is kind of contributing to the workflow feature, the work we're doing there. However, it's more geared towards improving actors, which is overall going to improve the workflow feature. So I always enjoy seeing when we have specific features that are getting a lot more love, even if it's through like, implementation of a new feature. But I think the actor subsystem has needed a lot of more attention for a bit. And I think this is showing, like seeing that proposal made me excited because it's like one of the first steps to actually making this work at scale for the workflow feature.
All right, Yaron.
Yeah, I think, on that point, for example, we're looking into providing leader election on top of our distributed lock API, because you can achieve leader election with Dapper today with like 10 or 12 lines of code, which is significantly better than, doing it yourself. But as we look into providing these higher level abstraction to actually use Dapper components or existing Dapper APIs, we can actually improve these. Like you say, workflows are improving. Actors, I really look forward to later action improving distributed lock. Yeah, for me, it's workflows that's coming up. For me, it was the missing program model for Dapper for a pretty long while. Cross-cluster communication, I think, is also really important because, compute can't be told where to run nowadays, right? You cannot constrain it to a single cluster. The clusters are becoming a security boundary sometimes. We need the ability to communicate between different apps wherever they're located on the edge. It might be an edge cluster or, a serverless cluster or a Kubernetes cluster. And that's going to really, democratize these access to these underlying services. So cross-cluster communication, I think, is going to become really crucial for Dapper.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
For me, it's something that I think we discussed some years ago. It's about how can the application receive events from the sidecar without exposing up any gRPC or HTTP port. That is something that we're still exploring. There's one engineer exploring that now. How we can use gRPC streaming for the app itself receive events. I think that will simplify a lot of the onboard experience into Dapper and also simplify the apps themselves when they don't have to expose an endpoint to receive pub sub events, for example. So still early stages. We don't have the proposal up yet. We have this discussion in the past, but that is something that I've been thinking about for years now, and we are finally exploring that option. Of course, in addition to workflows and the other building blocks.
And Xavier, I don't know if you heard my question. What's an exciting proposal that you know of that's coming down that's interesting to you?
Yeah, so I think it was mentioned almost by everybody, I think, but definitely the workflow API, I think it's a core component to have in Dapper. And then otherwise, just to name one as well, so I think it's very important as well to get the community involved because we're constantly creating new drafts, constantly creating new API proposals. So for example, one I'm working on, I really would love to see community contributions on, is an authorization API, an authorization component that would allow people to get or to check if they have access to a certain component, be that to a certain microservice or be that in, for example, backend communication. If a user logs in on the backend as an admin or as a user, do they have access to a certain object? And that's definitely something I would love to look into as well. And definitely there again, the community is very key to what we do, and we really would love to invite everybody to join in that discussion and help us to make sure that we build a roadmap that developers want to build.
Excellent. And I'll just say pub sub on actors. We should do it.
PubSub on actors, community has been asking for that since the very first day, literally, that we launched Dapper, and we basically moved it from milestone to milestone.
Even Motu asked as well.
Sorry?
Motu also asked for that.
Oh, they did? Good. Yeah, that's good. Yes, inbox for actors, all that good stuff that we really should be getting to.
Yeah, that's kind of a big basic thing. So, kind of, maybe let's reach out again here, and maybe I'll ask, maybe it's
Kendall wanted, Kendall had a question.
Do we have a question over here? Okay, let's go. No, here we go.
So, this is a question in regards to things that are in alpha.
Yeah.
Are there any plans to have some sort of life cycle or shelf life for alpha? Because I think that there is a perception that some alpha stuff shouldn't ever be used. There are some alpha things that we want to encourage, but maybe risky, and there's some things that we know they're going to go, they're going to move quick. And I think having things sitting in alpha too long gives a poor impression for new folks coming on board saying, this is kind of risky. Is there any thoughts around that?
Yes, there are many thoughts around that. Kubernetes, for example, they have a deadline. Like an API needs to reach stable by some period of time. Otherwise, it's going to get deprecated, right? I think for Dapper, you can see that happening now with the query API that we have.
That's
it's going to move into the new document store API, which is going to be the way to query databases going forward. And we're going to retire the query API because, we just didn't see much traction there. Configuration API, am really looking forward to transitioning from alpha to beta sometime soon. We don't have other alpha APIs. We actually have distributed lock, but that's really, really new. But yes, like the life cycle is really important here. I don't imagine we'll have, an alpha API singing in alpha for more than a year to start with. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, the reason I bring it up is because as I'm trying to, and folks probably here are doing the same thing, encourage their team members and their leadership to go look at this project because we see the value in it. And if they see a lot of stuff sitting in alpha, it's not the warm fuzzy feeling that you want them to see. But at the same point in time, alpha is there for a reason, right? And you need things in alpha. I guess the only other thing is for me as and although Dapper's been, on my radar for a long time, I'm relatively new to deep diving into Dapper. I think it would be great for maybe some call outs for community help saying, hey, these are 5 components, right, that are in alpha that are about to hit their shelf life unless they see some community contributions. And if I might see something like that and go, okay, that's been on my radar, I need to contribute to that. That might be helpful to kind of broadcast that a little bit, or figure out a way to kind of give that feedback to the community to kind of increase a little bit of the urgency, right? If someone might be just sitting on the edge, right, and contributing. So just a little thought on that.
I think that for components, we might have a solution sooner because we have now pluggable components. And many components that are in Dapper, they are there just mainly because we didn't have a way for you to extend Dapper to bring your own components. So we are going to revisit all the list of components that are in alpha and decide which one we're going to necessarily keep, which ones we're going to say, oh, if we're going to use this, you have to use this via this pluggable component solution. And we have one contributor that it's created a SDK for Go to compose pluggable components that it made like a one-liner almost to take an existing Dapper component and make it pluggable. So we are working on that direction. So Dapper we cannot simply let people keep adding components over and over again forever and keep them in alpha. It's not the image we want to keep because somebody has to maintain that. So we rather move towards pluggable components in those cases.
Well, I want to just say one more thing. I do like that idea, though, of kind of like providing an area where we can highlight maybe not like components that we need to be moved to stable. Maybe we want more of a process of figuring out like which things we want to kind of keep around. But I do like the idea of us trying to find like a space where we can kind of highlight different types of, issues or just things in general that the community thinks is valuable. And they're kind of just, things that if this is something you're very interested in, you should 100% get involved, or maybe get more visibility around that in general. I do agree with you there that we could do more work on that.
Okay, let's go over here with questions. Xavier, I'll try and get a question to you in a moment. Here we go.
Yeah, sure.
Just a quick follow-up on that. Do we have anything like a tech radar where, you could have those components and, those components are either moving towards, stable or they're on their way out?
Great suggestion. We should follow up on that.
Yeah, we should follow up. In fact, Xavier, maybe you should comment on this. Like, is there a tech radar where you're looking at which direction the components are traveling? Are they traveling towards stable, or are they traveling away from that? And maybe just your viewpoint generally on kind of the component stability.
Sorry, I didn't completely understand the question. So could you?
Okay.
Could you maybe,
The observation was that we should have a direction of where the components are traveling. So at this point in time, we actually have this mechanism where it goes from alpha, beta to stable, but you don't know which ones are which stage inside all of that. And having deeper visibility to, this particular component is sat there now for 3 releases and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Will it ever get to stable? Will this one ever get to stable? I think that's the question, really, and the observation.
Yes. So I think indeed. So normally we look at the commits that are happening on the repository to see, okay, well, what is being developed and what is being worked on, or we discuss it indeed in the community calls. I think indeed what we should work towards more is to have the documentation always up to date. It's a very tedious thing to keep the documentation up to date, but it's a very important thing as well. It shows where we're going towards, it shows what is happening as well, and it shows, for example, when a component was not being worked upon, or when the last stage was there, that we put a date when it was marked as an alpha component. And we did a lot of steps there since the beginning, but we can always improve on that. And I think maybe we should start with indeed changing the documentation to reflect that.
Yeah, I'll just say that there's nothing better than a component that is holding up a deployment in production where you are absolutely critical for you. And if you say this GCP PubSub component needs to be stable by next month, it'll get there. If we hear those things, words happening. So the words from the community about a particular component needing it stable are the most powerful thing you can give us.
Yeah, great suggestion. We're going to take that up and follow up on that.
Was there another question over here? Yeah, oh, here we go. Let me rush over.
I was just going to ask as part of this conversation, because I think it's related. I know that y'all are now in the CNCF. Are there certain like requirements or like governance practices you have to put in place just as a result of now working toward like a certain graduation status? Yeah, I'm just curious about that.
I actually think we tick most of the boxes for a graduated project today. It's just a matter of more maturity and getting more feedback, I think, from production users out there. Yeah, I think the last thing we were missing was like the CNCF Ops Best Practices badge, but I think we have 94% of that completed actually. So yeah, I think we're in a good spot as in terms of graduation.
Okay, do we have more questions from the audience before I pose the next one around these things? If not, I'm always intrigued about, your maintainers and approvers, and, it's a tough life being a maintainer. I think there's greatness in it as well, but there's also a lot of challenges inside it all. So I'm always kind of intrigued about, what is it you would love to have help with, in the role of the project as a whole, things from a maintainer perspective or approvers, or just things that you would love to see helping out the project that you could, that would maybe just help you as maintainers, if that's the way you look at whatever else you feel around these things, because it is a interesting life.
So my answer to that is going to be a little weird. Okay, don't hug me. No, and I'm going to explain that. So I see on Twitter, from time to time, like hug a maintainer. Don't. Well, maybe, but ask for permission first. No, but seriously now. Feedback from the community is the most important thing. We've mentioned that earlier, right? Bring up issues, contact us on Discord. That helps us the most, because when we as maintainers, when we talk to people running Dapper in production and they go to us and they're like, your shit's crashing all over the place, then we don't get much sleep at night. Artur and I have experienced that together many a times. If you can try out Dapper, okay, this is concrete. When Dapper releases its stable releases, we actually have RC releases, release candidates. If you can try these out and give us early feedback on that, that will help us, I think, right now more than anything. Because not only will it help us, it'll help people who are going to take a dependency on Dapper in production for these releases afterwards. Because it's going to help us, identify those crucial aspects that are failing before they hit the stable release. So yes, try out RCs. That for me would be a really big help.
One.
Sorry? Best place to leave the feedback is on GitHub, definitely. That's where we scan it the most, I think, GitHub. Yes, and if it's a securely related issue, contact a maintainer privately, and don't disclose what the thing is. But if it's anything other than, P0 for security, GitHub, I think, is the best place to put it at.
And I was just going to add on to that as well, that getting feedback from the community doesn't need to be that you're just necessarily, commenting on everything. We would love that. But you could also, it could be as little as, I've heard a few people mention that they've been watching a few proposals, right, that have been open, like liking those proposals or contributing in maybe those conversations. If it's just the things that you're interested in coming down the pipeline, even that is helpful. Because sometimes we have a bunch of us that are kind of just like trying to collaborate on things, and it's always nice to get an external voice that kind of just lets us know we're going in the right direction. So even just like, I think people have mentioned like the cross-cluster communication proposal, or even, I don't know, there's a few of them that have come up over and over again just through today. I think one way you could also help us, in addition to, testing out RCs, is get involved in those conversations. If you're interested in any of these features, let us know, because it does actually help a lot.
One thing that I see people doing a lot at the community that helps today, and the more of that, the better, is to kind of self-helping. So when somebody in the community posts like an issue, having problems set up Redis pops up, and then somebody else from the community answers that without requiring a maintainer to go there and answer the question. Or a GitHub issue that is more like a support request. Oh, this can work for me. What am I doing wrong? Here's my YAML, you know. So this type of self-help within the community alleviates a lot of bandwidth for the maintainers. Because if each one of us have to stop and look at each support request, like, doesn't work for me, what do I do? We cannot do anything else. So I think this like self-help is definitely like, the more of that, the better.
And Xavier, your thoughts on things that would be good for as maintainer that would help you, that you'd love to see helping from the community?
Yeah, I think it's mentioned here as well. So like anything really, like just what we really need and what we love is that people just start to interact with the maintainer or with the repository that they want to contribute to. That can be as little as just fixing a typo, for example, because we look over a lot of typos. It can be as little as just opening an issue and describing it really thoroughly so we can start working on fixing it. Or it can be even more advanced and really starting to work in the code itself and fixing a small issue or even a bigger issue. And that's all we ask for. Like if you utilize a project, just contribute back to it, interact with us, so that we know what you need and that we can really act upon those wishes.
All right, good. So we're in close to end of time, but I want to hear final thoughts from each one of you. As the Dapper project goes forward, as you think about the things that are happening inside the community, what's happening inside the project as a whole, if there was one message that you wanted to send to the world, that you wanted to send about the project, what you felt excitement about, or what you felt was important about the project, or just something you just want to tell the community, because if you wanted to summarize up the day and your feelings of all of this, it sounds very grandiose, doesn't it?
Yes.
Artur, we'll start with you. What is it? How would you like to summarize your feelings about where we are today with Dapper and where it's going?
Well, first, I'm very thankful for the community we have. So I'm overwhelmed by like all the requests and messages we keep getting, all the companies and individual contributors trying out Dapper. That's a humble experience for me. I learn a lot as well from the community. There are many things that people tried out. Like, I didn't even know they existed. So let me see how this works to help you. So thank you, and like keep trying Dapper and keep trying new scenarios for us, and then and we'll keep doing our best job to keep it up with your demands.
I love how people try to break Dapper in every conceivable way, like in ways you wouldn't even imagine. I've seen the weirdest stuff out there. Like, seriously, like in the past 3 years, we've seen people try to use Dapper in so many different ways, and that helps. That helps us a lot, because it helps us realize, how maybe sometimes we're not clear enough about what the expected usage of Dapper should be, and that helps. I think, something from me as a maintainer to the community, I can guarantee that we're not going to stop trying to solve the problems that you're facing today and will face tomorrow. But for us to know what these problems are, you need to be really forthcoming with what your issues are today. To make sure that Dapper stays relevant when times change, we need your input on, what are the distributed system challenges of tomorrow. So yeah, input from the community, again, it's a common recurring theme here. It's really important that we have this, communications flow be what we want it to be, which is continuous, a very close and continuous feedback loop.
That would actually be mine as well. Just to add on to that a bit more, though, I think that for the Dapper project in general, it's a really cool, it's a super cool project. But I think getting more involvement from the community is incredibly crucial. I don't want to, I think we've pretty much said this and kind of beat, a dead horse here, but if there's one thing I want you to walk away with, it's that you should try to figure out a way, if you're interested in Dapper, figure out a way to be involved in the community. It could be passive. You could sit on a community call. You could look at our times that we post the community calls on our community page and just join the community call while you're making coffee. You don't have to talk. You can just listen and like absorb the community through the call. You can go ahead and, do presentations on Dapper, or you could, add in more code to Dapper, but there's so many different ways to contribute. And the way that we look at our contributors, it's not just how many lines of code you're contributing to the project, it's also, just being present and being there. So I think if you can find a place in Dapper to be present in, there's a lot of different opportunities for you to actually engage and be more active in the community.
And Xavier, your 15-second thoughts.
Yes, so first of all, very, very grateful to be able to contribute to it. And then to close off, I would say everybody just try it, invite everybody else, try all the SDKs, and break as much as possible so you can keep on evolving.
All right, well, thank you. Well, if you want more of this, as we said, there's weekly, every 2 weeks, there's weekly community calls that you can join in, and please come and join those. And we're more than welcome to talk to you after this, once this event is finished. By the way, in terms of edge cases, Dapper runs on the International Space Station, in case you didn't know. That's what, but please, reach out to everyone in this room. Thank you for being with us today. It's been fabulous, and thank you for our panel and all hearing your insights.
Happy birthday.
Who's having?
Oh,
It's 3 years today, really?
It actually is 2019. Might have been the 19th of October. Oh, whatever it was on a blog post. Was it a blog post? Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So Dapper
Actually-
is recently 3 years old. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
21. Yeah.
Thank
3
you.
years old, yes. 3 years today.